A homeless man saved my life. I remember driving without thinking to the bridge. The radio was off. My phone was off. The world was a place I didn't want to be in anymore. I wanted to turn my life off. It had been 3 months since the car accident that stole my wife from me. After their condolences, people would tell me it was lucky my son survived. He was only 4 months old, and the car had been mangled. People said it was a miracle, and it was, but I was struggling, only having a piece of my wife, living in our son, and not having her here with us. I wasn't ready for any of this. I didn't know how to be the person everyone expected me to be. I didn't know how to be the man my son needed me to be. I was the one who worked long hours. My wife had stayed home, nursed him exclusively. She knew his sleep schedule and how to calm him down when he cried for no reason that we could find. She knew everything. And now it was just me, and suddenly bottles and formula and diapers and crying more than he used to. I was terrified I could never be enough. I parked near the bridge and walked without really feeling my feet hit the ground. There was no one else on the road, and things felt like I was in a nightmare more than they felt real. The silence around me was broken only by the distant sound of rushing water below. My son was safe with my mom. She was better for him than I was. She watched him while I worked. She knew him at least as well as I did, and probably better. I climbed over the rail and stared down at the dark water moving below and began to cry. I remember thinking how tired I was. Not sleepy, tired in my bones. "Cold night," a voice said. I flinched slightly, turning my head. A man stood a few feet away. He was older than me, maybe late 50s. His beard was a little wild, and his clothes were older, a bit dingy. "Yeah," I agreed. He leaned on the railing casually, giving me space, at home with the silence. We stood there for a while without speaking, and then he asked, "You want to talk about it?" "I don't know," I said. "My name's Henry," he told me. "Alan," I replied. Within a few minutes, the words started to come out. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do. One day I had the perfect life, my wife and my son, and now I'm here." "What happened to your wife?" he asked. "She was in a car accident. We were on the phone talking about what I should pick up for dinner, and then there was this loud bang. A car hit the driver's side door, and she was just gone." "What about your son?" "Just a scratch on his forehead." "That's really lucky," Henry said. "But you don't feel lucky, do you?" "I don't know how to be a dad," I admitted. "He deserves someone better, someone who knows what they're doing, like my mom." Henry didn't interrupt, he just listened. "You know what's funny?" I added after a long pause. "Everyone keeps saying I'm strong, but they don't see the parts where I sit on the kitchen floor crying next to his bouncy seat because I don't know why he's crying." "Yeah, kids don't come with instructions," he agreed. "If they did, half the world would be less anxious." "I just keep thinking, she's supposed to be here," I explained. "She was the good parent. She's the one Mason needs." Henry shook his head gently. "You loved her, didn't you?" "Still do, more than anything." "Then she chose well." I looked at him, confused. "She chose you," he went on. "She chose you to be the father of her kids. She knew you could be a great dad." I cried again then. We kept talking. Time slipped by without me noticing. He told me he was a dad too. "Life just pulled us apart," he said quietly. "No big moment, no cataclysm, just circumstances. Too many missed chances and bad timing. One day you look up and everyone's gone in different directions." "Do you see them?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not for a long time, but I'd give anything just to sit across from them and hear about their day." "Do you know where they are?" I asked. "My son moved to Ohio and my daughter went to Florida." He sighed. People think being a parent is about getting everything right. It's not. You're not going to get everything right. But you have to keep showing up. Again and again." I didn't answer. Henry had wisdom that I was in desperate need of. I needed someone to tell me what to do, because my own voice had brought me to this bridge. We talked for what felt like hours, about fear and regret, about how life doesn't follow the plans we make when we're young. By then, the cold had settled into my body. I was freezing, so when Henry rubbed his hands together and asked, "You want to grab a coffee with me?" I hesitated, but nodded. I drove us to a small coffee shop a few blocks away. It was one of those places open late for night workers and insomniacs. Henry directed me, and I followed his instructions. Something told me I could trust this stranger. In the shop, I reached for my wallet, but Henry beat me to it. He pulled out a handful of coins and paid. "I got it," he said with a grin. We sat with our coffees, the warmth thawing our fingers. For the first time in weeks, the fog in my head felt thinner, and when we eventually stepped outside, the sky had started to lighten slightly, early morning creeping in. Henry hugged me before we parted. "Go get your son," he told me. "He's gonna need breakfast soon." "Yeah," I nodded. And then he walked away. I didn't realize he was homeless until a few days later. His layered, dingy clothes, his wild beard, paying with coins. I started to feel guilty. I should have realized, and I should have paid. I should have helped him, because Henry had given me more than I could ever repay him for. A week passed. I spent more time with my son than I had since the accident. I actively learned from my mom, asking her a slew of questions. I learned how to make him laugh. I learned that he liked when I made ridiculous noises, and that sometimes he cried just because he wanted to be held. I think he cried because he missed Rebecca too, and there was nothing I could do in those moments except be there and hold him. But I kept thinking about Henry and how I could help him. I wanted to thank him. One afternoon while my son napped, I opened Facebook and wrote a post, sharing it to a couple of community pages as well as my own feed. I described Henry and where I had seen him and that I just wanted to find him. The post spread faster than I expected. Friends shared it and strangers commented, and 2 days later I got a message reading, "I think that's Henry Isaac. He's around town a lot." My story spread locally thanks to the community pages. I didn't share exactly how he had helped me, but my gratitude came through. And soon people started asking how they could help him. Someone suggested a fundraiser. And it snowballed. A local diner offered to donate him a few meals. A construction company offered a job if Henry wanted it. Someone started a GoFundMe and people chipped in money. $5 here, 20 there. The story just kind of took off. It went viral locally, and within days there was enough money to rent a small apartment for him for a couple of months. All we needed was to find him. He looked shocked to see me again. "What is all this?" I hugged him. "You helped me," I told him, "and now it's our turn to help you." He looked overwhelmed. "I didn't do anything," he murmured. "You did more than you know." When Henry saw his apartment for the first time, he cried. He'd brought his belongings with him, an old backpack and one trash bag. And that's when people really went all in. Julie from the bakery donated plates, cups, and cutlery. John, the owner of the construction company who offered Henry a job, he filled his refrigerator and freezer. I got him a mattress, Paige bought him bedding, and Niall got him some new clothes. Henry moved into the apartment that week. He started working for John, and he was able to stay in the apartment. And he and I began a new tradition of meeting for coffee every Saturday. He made my son laugh like no one else could. Eventually, I asked Henry to be an honorary uncle, and that seemed to touch him deeply. "Well," I pointed out, "he might not even have had his dad if it hadn't been for you." We had stopped being strangers and started being friends. Close friends. Maybe my best friend. And a couple of months after that, I had a surprise for him. It had taken weeks of searching, of phone calls and awkward conversations, but eventually, I found them. Henry's kids. They were grown, lives scattered across different states, and Henry, unbeknownst to him, was a grandfather. I told the kids about where he was in life now, about how he had struggled, but how he had helped me on a bridge when I needed someone most, how he was getting his life together now. And one Sunday afternoon, I invited Henry over for a barbecue, telling him it was for a few of my family and friends. But when he got to my house, he walked into my living room and froze. 2 people stood up at once. "Dad? Jenny? William?" Henry asked. I stepped into the background, quietly, my son in my arms. But Henry looked over at me a moment later, tears in his eyes as he hugged his kids. And after they left, Henry asked, "So, you just did all this?" I shrugged. It was the least I could do. I mean, you gave my son his father back, and I tried to return that favor. Sometimes I think about that night on the bridge and how determined I was to leave this world and my son behind. I thought I needed Rebecca and no one else could help me. But it turns out, that night, I needed Henry. Henry told me it's all about showing up for people. And sometimes that is enough to change everything. If you enjoyed this reading, please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future stories. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. This has been Tales by Rachel, where we breathe life into every story.